Good morning, boys and girls. It's time for another story. Our story today took place a long time ago in a different place, but our story is called Joseph's Coat. Well, I'm sure you're all familiar with the Bible story about Joseph's coat, but that's not the one I'm going to tell you today. It was the middle of November and it was very, very cold. But little Joseph, he was dancing around his house. He was so excited because he had something new. His Aunt Carol had sent a box of clothes and things for his family. And in the bottom of the box, there had been a long winter warm coat. And Mother had taken it out of the box and she had looked at it. And she thought, I can fix this. That coat needed a new lining inside. So she got some very dark material and she relined that little coat. Well, it was still way too big for Joseph. But when Joseph put it on, oh, he was so warm. He didn't mind that it had belonged to somebody else. It was new to him. And it was warm. Well, when he went dancing down the steps of his house that morning, his mother watched out the window as he went. And she thought to herself, if only people just look at the front of the coat and see how warm Joseph is, everything will be fine. I'm sure it'll be fine. Well, Joseph, he skipped and he ran down the road till he got to a place where there was a stone wall that came, and there was a road that came in this way, and there was a road that went in that way. When Joseph got to that corner, he saw other kids coming down this road. Well, he ran on ahead. He was so excited. He was going to get to school all nice and warm. And then that group of boys, one of them was the minister's son, and he had a whole bunch of friends with him. And when they looked ahead and they saw Joseph running down the road, they saw something else. The minister's son, he looked at it. He looked at Joseph's back and he started to giggle and he went, Joseph's coat! Joseph's coat of many colors! And all the other boys, they looked and they started giggling and they picked up the chant, Joseph's coat of many colors! Well, the little boy that they were looking at, his name was Joseph. And Joseph, he frowned when he heard Joseph's coat of many colors. What could they mean? His coat was a dark color. It wasn't many colors. And then he went, there must be something wrong with the back of my coat. But he didn't know what it was. All he knew is he wanted to get out of there as fast as he could. He would like to turn around and run back home. But he thought, I can't do that. I need to get to school on time. So he kept on running. When he got to the schoolyard, he made sure that he kept his back to everybody so all they could see was the front of him. Because although his coat was really big, the front of it looked fine. So he slipped past the other kids, keeping his back to the wall. And he went into the little room where they hung their coats. And he hung up that coat. And when he did, he could see what was wrong. On the back of that coat, there was a seam that went all the way down it. And sometime in that coat's life, it must have been laying in the sunshine with it folded up, because this dark line in the center, on the other side, was a very light stripe. And on the other side was a stripe that was a different shade. And it looked like here was the dark color of the coat. Here was a really light, the coat was almost black, but Here, the sun or something had faded out the material, and it was almost tan. And then there was that dark black stripe, and over here, it almost looked like it was brown, and then it was black again. It almost looked like the back of a skunk. Oh, poor Joseph. He went into his class and he sat at his desk and he thought, what can I do now? Before I go home, there's recesses and there's lunch where all the kids go play. I can't do any of those. What can I do? I guess I'll just have to stay in the classroom so nobody sees the back of my coat. That day went by, and Joseph, during recesses and during lunch, he sat at the window and he watched the other kids playing outside, and he watched the minister's son. Now, the minister's son had a brand new coat. It wasn't new like Joseph's. Joseph's was new to him, but the minister's coat, it was beautiful, and it was warm, and it had a fur coat. It had a fur collar that he could fold up around his ears to keep his ears warm. As Joseph watched out the window, the minister's son ran and played, and all the other kids played and were having a marvelous time. Only Joseph sat looking out the window longingly. Well, when the end of school came, Joseph, he kind of waited around till the other kids left so nobody would make fun of him. He put on his coat because it was so cold outside, and he ran home as fast as he could. But as he was going home, he thought about his mother. His mother was so good to him, and she couldn't afford anything else. He couldn't make her sad. He wouldn't tell her that the kids had laughed. So the next morning, he got up and he thought, what can I do? That morning and the next morning, it wasn't so cold outside. The sun shone down brightly. Joseph, when he'd seen the other kids pass on the road, when he had gotten to that junction where that big wall was of stones, he went behind it and he took off his coat and he folded it up. And then he'd gotten a good idea. He put his coat back on, but he turned it inside out, so just the shiny lining that his mother had put in the coat showed, and he thought, this looks better. Well, then he started down the road. But pretty soon here came the minister's son again with all his friends. And he looked at Joseph and he looked at that coat and he was puzzled for a minute, and then he went, oh, the little coat is inside out. See the coat, it's inside out. And the other boys, they started to laugh. Joseph's wearing Joseph's coat inside out. Isn't it funny? And they all laughed. And Joseph, he wilted. Oh, that didn't work either. So when he got to school, he still didn't go out to recess. And he didn't go out for lunch. He just sat there. He had to have another plan. And then he thought of it. So the next morning when he got up, he ran as fast as he could. And he folded up that coat from his Aunt Caroline. And he put it behind those rocks at the junction. And he ran as fast as he could to school. Well, this worked for several days because he would make sure that he was running down the road when the other kids weren't there. Nobody saw that Joseph was going to school without his coat. He would wear it every morning, so his mother didn't know he didn't have a coat on. And when he got to the junction, which was about halfway to school. He would put it by the rocks. Well, those days, those first few days, the sun had shone and the wind hadn't blown. But on the third day, when he took the coat off, it was icy cold and the wind was blowing. It was howling and Joseph was frozen. Oh, he was so cold. But he ran as fast as he could to school. And by the time he got to school, the snow was falling. He got inside and he went where the coats were and he kind of hid back in the corner. His teeth were chattering. Oh, it was awful. But he had to stand there so that the teacher wouldn't notice how cold he was. He couldn't go in there shaking. Finally, he slipped into his seat, and nobody seemed to notice. And for some reason, the teacher hadn't noticed, and the other kids hadn't noticed that Joseph wasn't going out to play anymore. Well, Joseph did that for several days. He put his coat behind that stone wall. So halfway there, he would be warm in his coat, and the other half he would shake in cold. Well, the fourth day, the fifth day, the sixth day, when all the kids were at school, little Joseph's seat was empty. And the teacher, she got out her book and she had her pen all poised, and she was checking off the people that were there. She was doing the roll call. And she got to Joseph and she said, "Joseph Merriam." But she couldn't see him. Now, Joseph, he never missed school. And she said to the kids, "Is Joseph sick?" And from the back of the room, one of the other little boys said, "Joseph's really sick. I heard he's got the pneumonia, really, really bad." Pneumonia. Well, in those days, the doctors didn't have antibiotics like we do now. People get pneumonia now, but we give them pills and medicine, and they get well. But in those days, pneumonia could kill you. And then the little boy spoke up again. He said, "Yes, the lights were on in Joseph's house all night last night, and the doctor came in his sleigh on the snow, and he was there all night." Well, something began to put itself together in the minister's mind. It was like a great puzzle, and this was the last piece. He had noticed that little Joseph hadn't been out playing. And you know, the day after he had called Joseph's coat, he should have noticed that something was wrong, because the next day, Joseph wasn't outside playing either. And the minister's son had gotten Joseph's coat out of the coat closet at school, and he had put it on, and he had gone out strutting about out in the recess yard, and all the boys had laughed. "Look at the minister's son in Joseph's coat." And then he had taken it off, and the other boys had tried it on, and they had strutted about, and all the kids had laughed. And the minister's son, he was thinking about that, and he thought, where was Joseph? Why was Joseph's coat there? And then he put it together. The last time he had seen little Joseph was in just his shirt, running down the road toward home in the wind and the snow, without his coat on. And then the minister's son knew. Joseph, oh no, Joseph had got pneumonia because I teased him about his coat. Oh no. So when school was out for the next several days, the minister's son, when he thought nobody was paying any attention to him, he would rush off as fast as he could outside to the gate that went into Joseph's house. He would go stand in the bushes and he would look up at the windows all day and all night. There was lights in that house, and almost every time he would come by, the doctor was there. Finally, it was Thanksgiving. And Thanksgiving was one of the most wonderful days at the minister's house. All the cousins came, all the relatives came, and the food was marvelous. But the minister's son didn't care about any of it. Every day, the reports he would get about little Joseph were worse. What if Joseph dies? It's my fault. What if he dies? Well, the minister's son, he couldn't wait for Thanksgiving to be over. That evening, he went to bed. He couldn't wait to go to bed. Maybe he could go to sleep and not think about Joseph. Oh! But when he got in bed, he laid his head down on his pillow and he shut his eyes. But his mind kept working. And all around in his brain, his mind was going, I killed him. Maybe I killed him. Oh! He couldn't sleep. So he got up and he put his own clothes on and he ran outside as quietly as he could. And he got to Joseph's house. There were people parked all the way around it. He could see that his father had been there. The doctor's sleigh was there in front of the house again. He could see people walking back and forth in front of the windows. When somebody came out, he would go up close and he would listen to them talking about little Joseph. And it was always worse. People didn't know if Joseph was going to live. Oh, what could he do? And then finally he saw people coming out of the house and he thought, oh no. And then the doctor came out and drove away. Oh no. Oh no. Then he saw his father, the minister, come walking down the walk. It was so dark he really couldn't see his father's face, but you don't need to see the face of your father to know it's your dad. And he started walking right beside his father, very quietly, and his father didn't say anything. When they got home, his father went into his office. The minister's son followed him, and he said, Father, I killed him. I killed Joseph. And he started to cry. Great big tears rolled down his face. His father looked at him. He was curious, and he said, You did what? And then the minister realized. And he said, Son, do you think that Joseph died? He said, Yes, and I killed him. And his father said, Son, he didn't die. Oh, he came so close to it. They thought he wasn't going to make it. But now, the doctor said the crisis is past, and he's going to get well. Oh, what a relief. What a relief for the minister's son. He hadn't actually killed him. Oh! And he started to leave the office, and his father said, Son, come here. And the minister's son, he turned around and he said, Yes, Father, I know. He had told his father what he had done. He had told him about the coat and how he'd made so much fun of Joseph. He had been cruel and mean, and that was probably the only coat that Joseph had. And then he didn't even wear it anymore. And his father said, I'm calling you back because, and the minister's son interrupted. He said, I know, Father, I need to be punished. I need to be punished really big and really bad. But he said, Father, can I punish myself this time? Please, Father, please let me punish myself. The father was a wise minister, and he looked at his son and he said, All right, son, you punish yourself, whatever you think fits the crime. Well, all that winter. When Joseph got well and he came back to school, he wasn't wearing Aunt Carolyn's coat of many colors. He was wearing the minister's son's new coat with the furry collar that you could put up over your ears. And it was so warm. And the minister's son chose to wear the Joseph coat of many colors. He had learned his lesson, boys and girls. The only thing I want to say now, don't hurt others. You don't know what it might cause. It's not something that Jesus would ever do. And you want to be like Jesus. Thank you. And I'll see you next week. Bye-bye now.